Manchester United 1, Manchester City 3. Ultimately, once again, an incredibly disappointing day for Manchester United and their fan base. But I do just feel as though the boys in red were outclassed at the end of the day. In some respect, I feel sorry for the individuals. I think they've done certain things well, certain things wrong, and it's the same for Erik ten Hag. Tactically, he made some good decisions, he made some slightly worse decisions, and I do also feel sorry for him a little bit. But like I said, at the end of the day, it just looked like we came up against a club which has been run better for the past 10 years, and they just, in the end, blew us away. They completely dominated us. Of course, we are going to focus on the tactical side of the game, City in possession, because they had more shots than we had possession. That's harsh. You know, that's tough to watch. That is tough to watch. And it was difficult to watch as a Manchester United fan. Not to say that it was a terrible performance. You know, we were given hope. We were good on the transition. And for large periods, we were pretty solid defensively. But it just felt that City were always going to break us down because they had so much of the ball, so much control. The question is, how did they actually go about doing that? How did United try and cancel them out? What was the clashes in the game? Starting off with City on the ball, playing the ball from the back, where, to be honest, not much happened because we put very little pressure on the ball. Understandably so. In the past this season, when we have tried to press, we've been picked off a little bit due to our poor structure. So I don't mind Erik ten Hag going for this sort of 4-4-2 shape in a mid-block, sitting a little bit deeper. Of course, that allowed City to take control. Kyle Walker, Ruben Dias and Aki would form a back three as Stones moved forward into midfield like so. Now again, in the early stages, United are okay positionally. We've got a 4-4-2 shape. We can see that most of the players are reasonably compact and close to each other, reducing the spaces for City to operate in. But also, we've got a player on Stones and we've got a player on Rodri. This is a decent approach. Of course, completely stopping Rodri, completely stopping Stones is very, very difficult because they're unbelievably good players. But United did do a decent job early on in the game of kind of disrupting them, knocking them off their stride a little bit, just disturbing their build-up play. And it gave United that threat in transition. Of course, we saw it for the goal as well. United did have a threat when they could win the ball and then counter quickly. The problem was, as the game went on, City were able to take more and more and more control of the ball and move further and further up the pitch. And that came because of some tactical tweaks. One of the tweaks we saw was Rodri starting to drop a little bit deeper, just in front of the back three, and then Stones pushes a little bit higher in a sort of staggered build-up approach. Now, this is very De Zerbi-esque. If you remember me talking about him with Brighton last season, the ability to make staggered lines in midfield, it disrupts the opposition. And we can see the proximity of the United players has now changed. McTominay and Fernandes aren't as close as each other, things like that. So now City can start to combine and play around corners and move into better positions. So that was one concern. Although, to be honest, United still done a pretty good job of condensing the middle of the pitch. Of course, we've got these four players, Fernandes, McTominay, Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro. We have overloaded the centre of the pitch, and I think that was really the game plan from Erik ten Hag. Let City have the ball, be compact, condense the middle of the pitch, and then look to play in transition. And again, that did work at times in the opening stages, because we were compact, we were able to win the ball back, then we had the explosiveness of Marcus Rashford on the counter-attack, and also the threat of Garnacho as well in the final third, so we were playing well early on. In terms of how City looked to approach us, they looked to exploit the wide areas. Because, of course, we were being so narrow, it was quite difficult for them to move it forward into these areas, into the feet of someone like Haaland, for example. So instead, their focus was a little bit wider. As a result, we saw Bernardo Silva moving a little bit wider, and also Kevin De Bruyne. So rather than their box midfield all playing on the same lines, we can see we've got the double pivot a little bit deeper, and then De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva a little bit wider, making these nicer passing angles, allowing the City players to play on different lines. And this is where I felt that City started to hurt us a little bit, because now they could create overloads. Again, in the middle of the pitch, we had the overloads, because we had more players in these areas, we were able to condense it and make it difficult. Out wide, City did start to take advantages, because Garnacho and Rashford are in these positions where they need to be ready to apply pressure. So that can be towards Aki on this side, or towards Kyle Walker on the other side. The problem is, they also need to be in a position where, should it go to someone like Stones, they then need to be in here blocking off someone like De Bruyne and also blocking off Bernardo Silva in these positions. And again, largely, I think the United wing has done really well defensively. I think they put a good shift in, but it's difficult to do. It's difficult to keep doing it, and there are going to be moments where you get a little bit caught out. Garnacho on a couple of occasions just caught a yard or two high, allowing Bernardo Silva to get the ball in these areas. And that then means Doku can get the ball, go 1 versus 1 against Dalot, and that's threatening. Although Dallo, what a defensive performance. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He silenced Doku, I felt, for large parts of the game, played really well. The bigger threats, unsurprisingly, were on the other side of the pitch. That guy called De Bruyne, he's pretty good at football. Phil Foden as well, Kyle Walker, John Stones, Rodri, whoever it may be. There's a lot of good players over on that side of the pitch. And this is what City looked to use. They looked to create the overload out wide, with Foden wide initially, and then De Bruyne in this pocket. But what would also happen is one of their double pivot would come over as well. So that could be John Stones into this sort of position here, or it could even be Rodri, or at times it could even be Kyle Walker moving into these areas. But what it's done is it now creates a 3 of Foden, De Bruyne and Kyle Walker up against 2 United players. So now City have an overload, and they're probably the best team in the world at firstly creating an overload and then finding the spare man. It's what their football is all about. Finding someone like De Bruyne in this pocket here, or Foden out wide, or it could be the other way around even. City done this very well. And then they create this front 5, allowing them to overload our last line of defence, and they're going to try and put balls into the box, they're going to try and create and things like that. But, to be fair, United dealt with it somewhat. You know, I thought Raphael Varane's box defence was elite. Absolutely elite in this game. And Johnny Evans also done pretty well with most balls which came into the box. And Onana as well. Done a very, very good job of coming out, claiming crosses, being proactive and commanding his penalty area. And this was, for me, largely the story of the first half. City, of course, had 2 good chances. The Haaland one, which is quite a funny miss, and the Foden one as well, where Onana does very well. But apart from that, United did reduce the threat of City. City were forced to play wide, create overloads, swing crosses into the box. And I think that was United's plan for that to happen, because of Varane in the middle, because of Evans in the middle, and because of Onana. So in the first half, it worked somewhat. Of course, we were 1-0 up as well. We were very happy with that. But it was working. It was working. We were forcing City wide and then dealing with the ball into the box. The problem, though, and I've said this a lot recently, is that when you drop deep, you just invite pressure. Despite this pressure, however, United were able to hold on for the first half. They were able to do okay, and they were still a threat in transition. In the second half, it changed, and United got hurt.
So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFifa.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFifa for 10% off when you order.
So what was the second half change which allowed Manchester City to have more success? Essentially, it was a combination of Manchester United fatiguing, but also an even more attacking approach from Manchester City. At this point in the game, they're very aware that they have control, that United aren't pushing too high up the pitch, so City are going to have all of the territory. And also the field tilt, by the way, I've never seen something like it. I think it's the first time I've ever seen a number that low for United. But what City done was they moved John Stones. What a versatile player. This is a centre-back. And what they essentially done with him was put him into a 10 position almost at times. Now, what's also going to happen is Kyle Walker is going to split higher and wider, as is Nathan Ake, and then Ruben Dias in the middle, and then Rodri just in front of them. Now, what we also have to consider is that during this stage of the game, United start to fatigue. Again, we're looking at Rashford and Garnacho. They have been tasked with at times applying pressure to Walker and Ake. They've also been tasked with getting into a low block, also tasked with getting 2 versus 1 up against the opposition wingers. But then also, when we win the ball back, they've got to be our main threat in transition. These two were tired very, very quickly. And we also know that Marcus Rashford has an injury as well. The problem was, as those two fatigued and couldn't get out from the back as quick, they couldn't be our outlet, suddenly United literally had no way out. And that's how it felt for the entirety of the second half. There was no out ball. There was no way of getting out of our half. And City knew that. City knew that, because they then started to push even more players further forward. Kyle Walker would start to join the attack, at times building possession with a back 2. They knew that United couldn't hit in transition, so City could actually commit more men forward and be secure at the back. But the important thing they've done is widen the centre-backs and also use John Stones. So why is this so important? Well, first of all, the wider centre-backs, being Ake and Walker, so loose-term centre-backs, they can draw Marcus Rashford and Garnacho out more by being in a wider position. So particularly Ake on this side, as he moves out here and gets the ball from someone like Rodri, let's say United is super deep like this, as he gets the ball out here, it drags Garnacho. Now what this has now done, with Bruno Fernandes and McTominay still on Rodri, is it creates this 3 in here. So let's say Haaland is high, we've got Bernardo, Stones and Phil Foden, or it could be De Bruyne as well. 3 versus 2 against the 2 United midfielders. So in the first half, United had these central overloads. They had more players in the middle of the pitch than what City did, which is why we were able to defend, force the ball wide, deal with the crosses into the middle. United looked okay defensively. In the second half, City had the overload in the centre of the park. And for me, this is a complete game changer. Also, the slight role change of Phil Foden, suddenly given more licence to come inside, particularly when Walker went round on the overlap. De Bruyne could do it as well. Foden coming into these areas, obviously incredibly dangerous. He also ended up on the left-hand side as well, which we saw for the second goal. And this, for me, is just what killed United, but we can see those tactical ploys happening here. John Stones, nice and high. Very, very high up the pitch. This is a centre-back. It's absurd. It's absurd. But what happens is it allows Manchester City to create this overload here. What we can see is 1, 2, 3, 4 City players up against the 3 United players. And of course, when you do that, and you have good players like City do, they hurt you. A quick 1-2 from Phil Foden here with Julian Alvarez. Casemiro, simply put, just can't keep up. If we just quickly highlight Casemiro here, he just couldn't keep up with the whole situation. That's not a criticism. That's just where he is physically. I felt a little bit sorry for him. But it allows City to create this overload on the last line, and then as they move into the penalty area, we can see they have players in these channels, which is what I always say is the benefit of overloads in the final third. Of course, Phil Foden finishes into the back of the net, and it just felt like it was coming all day long. I don't think United done too badly. You know, I think considering what we had available to us, it was right not to press. It was probably right to sit deep and be quite compact, and I think the 4-4-2 was the best approach. I suggested it. And the approach was also correct, in my opinion, to play in transition, to look to play on a counter-attack. The problem was, as we fatigued and couldn't counter and couldn't get out, City just came onto us more and more and more. And I've said this a lot in recent weeks. It doesn't matter if you're forcing the opposition to long shots. A lot has been made of that. I keep saying City are having long shots, which is okay, but eventually it's going to hurt you. And we saw that with Phil Foden's goal. It's okay to reduce teams to long shots. You know, we're talking about United averaging 16 shots conceded per game in the Premier League this season. Eventually, no matter where they're from, when you play against quality opposition, they're going to score the goals. And that, for me, is just what happened in this game. We just faced a side which was too good for us. Far too good for us. Technically, tactically, physically. Mentally, not so much in this game. I thought United players stuck to the task well. I thought they worked hard. And individually, I don't know that the United players were terrible. But the decision-making level of the United players compared to the City players is just night and day. And ultimately, City destroyed us in the end, in my opinion. I think they destroyed us. They created so many good chances. They got into so many good areas, so many balls into the box, so much good work from Onana and last-ditch defending from the centre-backs. Stop them running away with this game. Whilst I think United were pretty good defensively, another day this could have been 4 or 5 from City. They got it spot on. United, worryingly, I feel like that was the best we could have done. That's a little bit concerning. And those are my thoughts on the game. Not too much more to talk about than that, because it wasn't a load of interesting tactical patterns. It was City dominating the game, using the structures which we've spoken about in this video. United looking to play in transition, but losing that threat after about 50-55 minutes. Then it was just back to the wall, defend. City broke us down. That was the theme of the game. It's disappointing again, because we have just been outclassed, but it's where we are. It is where we are. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is there someone who is particularly to blame? Did Ten Hag get it wrong? Is there a player who was particularly poor and let us down? Or was it just that City are too good? Far too good for us. Let me know what you think in the comments. Apart from that, though, we are finished for today. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.